Good evening. Well, the Online Safety Act came into force just 4 days ago. Well, I say that, actually, the legislation was passed a couple of years ago and it's come in stages, but it's already had quite an effect. There has not been initially much debate about it because the Conservative Party passed the legislation, the Labour Party inherited it. But it's pretty fair to say, you know, the Free Speech Union, people like myself and others have been very concerned about it. And it led to this astonishing backlash from the Science Minister, Peter Kyle, on Sky News this morning.
I see that Nigel Farage is already saying that he's going to overturn these laws. So, you know, we have people out there who are extreme pornographers, peddling hate, peddling violence. Nigel Farage is on their side. Make no mistake about it, if people like Jimmy Savile were alive today, he'd be perpetrating his crimes online. And Nigel Farage is saying that he's on their side.
Well, just to be sort of very clear, I'm not on Jimmy Savile's side. I thought it was an absolutely appalling thing for him to say. Probably shows you just how much trouble they're in as a government. And a very stupid thing to say, given that his own party leader, the Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, of course, faced a barrage of criticism for not prosecuting Jimmy Savile when he was in charge of the Crown Prosecution Service and subsequently apologised to the nation. But I don't really want to spend too much time talking about Peter Kyle. I think there are bigger and more important aspects to talk about, including this community note on X that was put back to Peter Kyle. It said, since coming into force, Online Safety Act has blocked, restricted, censored content that wasn't what the Act was for. This includes immigration and even parliamentary debates. Well, let me give you briefly my very serious objections to the Online Safety Act. The first is we're told it's to protect children. But I suspect most 13-year-olds are more tech-savvy than Peter Kyle, because there are things out there called VPNs. Yes, there are ways that you can get around all of this, ways that you can hide your IP address, and they'll cost you £2.50 a month or something like that. Interestingly, since the 25th of July, there was one particular VPN site who'd seen a 2,000% increase in the number of people subscribing to it. And here's the worry. Of course, we want to protect children from extreme content, but if they go to get their stuff through VPNs, they'll then be able to access the dark web and stuff that is even more horrendous than what is generally available online. So maybe this is just a sledgehammer to miss the nut. The worry is that it leads to a genuine crackdown on free speech. Unbelievably, it gives unchecked ministerial power to Peter Kyle. Yes, he will be able to unilaterally impose new censorship rules without any parliamentary debate or vote and make sure that Ofcom regulate according to his demands. And perhaps the biggest worry is Section 179, which says that if anybody communicates something that is false but causes non-trivial psychological harm, that could in fact be criminal behaviour, which, if you think about it, means that all satire would be dead, because all satire takes a grain of truth and exaggerates it and presents it in a way that is slightly false. So I genuinely think this is a threat on free speech. Unbelievably, Conservative Member of Parliament Katie Lamb gave a speech in Parliament about the rape gangs. That speech, despite being given under parliamentary privilege, has already been edited online. Even comments of Elon Musk himself have been edited online. I've been supported, interestingly, by Jonathan Hall KC, who is the terrorism czar, and he says this act simply won't work or achieve its goal. I don't know whether Peter Kyle thinks he's a supporter of Jimmy Savile. I don't know. But I'm keen to ask you, do you think, as I do, that this is a threat to free speech? Yes or no? Please give me your thoughts. Tweet #Farage on GBNews or email farage@gbnews.com.
Hello, I'm Bev Turner. Now, it can feel like the money in our bank accounts at the moment does not keep up with the cost of living, and maybe there's a solution. I'm here today with the CEO of TallyMoney, Cameron Parry. Cameron, what is TallyMoney?
Well, Bev, with TallyMoney, you get a current account and a debit card, but instead of pounds, you use milligrams of gold as your everyday money.
So why gold?
Gold traditionally is a great store of value. It has, on average, gone up at over 11% per annum for the last 25 years against the pound. It's tripled in value in the last decade. And in the last 2 years alone, it's increased by 50% against the pound. Banks' savings products just can't compete with that level of growth.
But this isn't just about gold. This is about a currency that you guys have created at TallyMoney. Explain it to me as though I'm an idiot.
So, look, people need to be able to hold their earnings and build their savings in a money that retains its value and remains in their legal control and remains theirs to access, away from government control.
Great. You had me at not exposed to government control.
You should feel safe and happy with your money. You should have peace of mind. The more money you see in your bank balance, and that's the type of thing we're trying to deliver, and give people choice in the type of money they get to use every day.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Cameron. Thank you.
I'm joined by Sir Ranald Jayawardena, a former Conservative MP, a minister, and Joe Phillips, journalist and former press secretary to the late Paddy Ashdown. Ranald, the demands on the last government following suicides of teenage kids, we all know there is some shocking stuff on the internet. We all know the stuff on the internet we would much rather our kids did not see. And that clearly is why the Conservative government put forward the online safety bill as it was. But just sometimes the road to hell is paved with good intentions. I mean, I'm guessing this is not how you wanted it to work out.
No, not at all. And as you said, a lot of this is in the application of the law. As you say, Peter Kyle, as Secretary of State, he has the ability to choose how it's implemented. So, the intentions of the bill, the Act now, can be good. And as you've set out, there are some very good reasons why we might want to protect our children in this way.
Absolutely.
But it's the application of the law that's absolutely wrong here. The fact that news stories on Twitter or X are being censored, that's not surely the intention of any politician, and it's gone wrong. And there's another thing here as well, which is, I think the truth is that politicians are very bad at figuring out where technology is going to go in the future.
This is exactly what I was going to get on to. When you say of the future,
even now?
I suspect most 13-year-olds, as I said a moment ago, are more tech-savvy than Peter Kyle.
But bear in mind, this legislation was drafted a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
Things move on in at such a pace. And as well as things like VPNs that you mentioned and so on, frankly, the actual way to protect young people is to keep technology away for as long as possible. And I think, smartphones out of schools, smartphones hopefully out of young children's lives. That's the only way to really protect them.
I'll come back on a smartphone point in a minute. I mean, here are ministers defending this act, shadow ministers endeavouring to say as little as they possibly can. Mm-hmm. But if it's here to protect kids, why on earth does it set up an elite force of police officers to monitor content around illegal immigration and asylum hotels?
Well, I think, Reynolds put his finger on it, and it is the fact that politics and politicians are absolutely and totally useless when it comes to dealing with technology. And we've seen that with successive governments who've had the wool pulled over their eyes by people who go, this scheme will be marvellous, it'll sort out the health service, it'll sort out
the spending on health on tech has been
and it's because nobody will say, hang on a minute, how does that work? Just run that by me one more time. Because people are too afraid of looking stupid. And we all know that techie people, and I'm apologising if there's any nerdy tech people out there, but, they do have a way of talking to you as though you're completely stupid. So you sort of think, well, I won't ask a question because obviously I am stupid. So I think that is part of the problem. I think Peter Kyle's comments are appalling. I think they are... they're offensive, but they're also ill-judged. And I'm very surprised because he is usually a very sure-footed minister.
That's exactly what I thought this morning. Of all of the ministers that appear regularly on the media, he seems to be one of the most intelligent, one of the most balanced. But this was really almost almost a meltdown.
Well, it was extraordinary, Nigel. And I just think, you would only behave like that if you know in your heart that this is not a very good bill. Yeah. And I think, we're already seeing, I think there's something like 300 or 400,000 signatures on a petition. Yep. And a lot of these are little hobby organisations, that can't afford to have the technology that they should have. So it's an example of, good intentions ending up.
Now, satire one of the things that the Brits are very good at, through cartoons, through jokes, through Gilbert and Sullivan songs, it doesn't matter what it is, satire. And I really do worry. And, you know, to be fair, Ranald talked about interpretation. But the idea that if you communicate something that is false, well, you could even say one person's truth is another person's falsitude and vice versa, that causes non-trivial psychological harm. But, I mean, any joke could cause offence.
Well, yes, of course it could. I mean, you know, the sort of things that a lot of comedians 20, 30, 40 years ago are deeply, deeply offensive now. You know, and we wouldn't countenance it. So everything changes and time changes and acceptance changes on language and things like that.
But the point about comedians is if comedians say something that is out of tune with the times, they stop getting bookings.
Well, exactly.
The market sorts it out. All the TV won't take them or whatever. I mean, is free speech under threat with this in your view?
I think the whole question of free speech is very difficult, as we know, because I think there are an awful lot of bad actors out there who are very happy to put out downright lies, whether they're rogue states or whether they're, you know, enemy states. But we know there is false information out there. We know that some of that information can be very dangerous.
But how do we regulate?
Well, you can't, because the horse has already bolted.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of the problem. And actually what you have to do is you have to look at a way, you know, and Ranald, I love you dearly, but you're living in cloud cuckoo land if you think you can keep smartphones out of the hands of kids.
Well, no, this is not true.
No, I've got a thought on that. Just quickly, Ranald, do you accept that the implications of this are a threat to free speech?
In the way it's been introduced, yes. And this is actually one of the reasons when it was going through Parliament, Kemi actually opposed it. In fairness to her, she was a Secretary of State. It was a brave thing to do. She actually said this was a bad piece of law.
Initially, they all voted. Literally, you all voted for it.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah. And it's in the implementation that it's been exposed.
Now, here's a thought.
Yes.
A techie tells me, a couple of techies tell me, that the way to solve this is your kids have a handset that is limited to the number of functions it can perform, limited to the number of apps that it can actually download. And that's not to say another kid at school won't have a different phone, but surely the answer must be a tech solution somewhere.
Totally. You've got to really have that physical solution rather than a technical one. And that is about stopping children having smartphones. If they need a phone for safety reasons because they're travelling long distances, give them a brick. I remember my old Nokia 3210 with Snake. That was the best thing you could do. That's fine.
And is there an irony here, Joe, sort of final thought on this, that we are restricting content, I'm talking here about current affairs and debate, to 16 and 17-year-olds.
When we give them the
whilst at the same time, they're going to get the vote.
Yeah. And the other thing that I think is really important just on the tech solution, you've got to make the big tech companies unlock stuff. So one of the problems, I think, with Molly Russell, the young girl who killed herself, was it took forever for her parents to find out what she'd been looking at. And I think, you know, the tech companies have got a role to play because a lot of it's about algorithms. But I think, you know, the idea that...
But they also have a right to protect our privacy. You know, or we have a right for them to protect our privacy, except in extreme circumstances, such as a court order.
Children are under
under
instruction
18.
of their adult parents or guardians.
Yes, but in this case, this was the parents of Molly Russell, the ones who accessed the content. I don't think any of that should happen without a court order. And I worry, I just feel we have a government that wants to control as much as it possibly can.